Like to call to order Albany Common Council meeting for Monday, August 5th, 2019. Sorry for being a little late in caucus. We apologize to all those people who are here at 7 o'clock and expected the council meeting to start at 7. We submit our apologies. So can the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anani. Ms. Applyrs. Mr. Ballerin. Mr. Conti. Ms. Doesschate. Ms. Fahey. Ms. Farrell.
Here.
Mr. Flynn. Mr. Hoey. Mr. Igo. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Kimbrough. Ms. Love. Mr. O'Brien.
Here.
Mr. Robinson. Ten present, 5 absent.
Thank you. In this session, would we please rise with me, saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and after that, we'll do a moment of silence. And during the moment of silence, we ask that in your own way that you recognize the tragedies that's going around in our country at El Paso, Texas, and at Dayton, Ohio, and that we remember those who've lost their lives and continue to remember those who are fighting for gun laws to be changed in this country, and those who pray that our leadership in the Senate side of our Congress gets their act together and pass meaningful gun control laws, and do it in a way that befits whatever belief you have. So join me for a moment of silence. Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance first. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tonight's meeting is we have on the agenda a public hearing, which is a lot different than our regular scheduled agenda. During this public hearing, anyone who wishes to speak has to speak only about the topic that is in front of us. The notice of the public hearing, I'll have the clerk read that. And during that public hearing period, you can only speak about the ordinance that is in front of us. At that time, council members, which is different than public comment, can ask you questions about your statements during the public hearing comment portion. With that being said, can the clerk please read the ordinance governing the public hearing?
Ordinance number 105119, an ordinance amending Chapter 375 of the Code of the City of Albany, Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance, in relation to incentives for developers to use energy-efficient and low-impact designs.
Is anyone signed up for the public hearing?
2.
Could the clerk please call the first speaker?
Pete Sheehan.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this. My name is Pete Sheehan. I live at 32 Buckingham Drive, and I would just like to briefly state that I support the ordinance. I believe that the important part of this, where it says low-impact development incentives detailed shall be suspended and not available for new development or redevelopment applications submitted between June 30, 2019 and June 30th, 2020 is worthy. I think that'll allow us to go back and study this in further depth, and I am in support of this ordinance. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about it.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Tim Looker.
My name is Tim Looker. I live at 146 Winthrop Avenue, and I'm here to speak in favor of Ordinance 1051-19. I think it's what is needed to prevent the unintended consequence of a USDO incentive, and thank you very much for this time.
Thank you, sir. Is there any more people for the public hearing?
Tina Lieberman.
Hi, my name is Tina Lieberman. I live at 30 Aspen Circle, and I'm also on the Sustainability Advisory Committee, but I'm not speaking as a member of that because we've had no time to discuss this and come to any sort of consensus. So as a resident, I'd like to speak in support of Ordinance 1051-19. I definitely think it's time to reevaluate the contribution of a green roof to the sustainability in terms of building in the city. Versus the impact on what giving away an extra floor has on our city and the residents. Basically, I think that extra floor is like amounts to a giveaway to developers for a very minimal investment on their part in sustainability. And what I would love to see the city requiring for something that big of a giveaway would be, like, for example, no fossil fuel use in new development, which is very easy to achieve now with the high energy efficiency heat pumps, those mini splits, and the heat pump water heaters that are now being used that run totally on electricity. That electricity could be renewable and will be renewable in the future. And I think that would be, those kind of sustainability and energy efficiency standards would be much more appropriate for giving a whole extra story as an incentive. And I just wanted to say that I am a participant in the Hudson Valley Heat Pump Project, so I'm a person who switched from gas to a mini split, which I'm powering off electricity, and it's working great. And I have not needed to use my gas except as a backup very occasionally for this past 2 winters. I'm actually pretty much even on par with what I was paying for gas. So thank you for this opportunity, and I hope you pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? None? Is there any more speakers? Okay.
Albany Willis.
Good evening, council and council members. My vote for the ordinance is a yes to find effective measures. To be truthful with you, in addition to the ordinance in finding effective measures, I was also concerned with the impact that these projects are having in the community that are part of the restoration of that particular neighborhood based on that project. For example, for the developer out of Arborough, there's definitely some miscommunication. I know that the legislators have selected areas, and I think they communicate fairly, but even on a closer level, our ward leaders have closer contact with our community. So either you dropped the ball or the message wasn't communicated to you properly. Here's the information for the project pertaining to one of the ordinances that we're confronting with today. This one is the Lumber Street Apartments. It's a misrepresentation, and I think it should be put before federal court for review. So I'll just give you a tidbit of it in my few moments. It said you are about to complete an application for a low-income housing tax credit unit and moderate income at Lumber Street Apartment Number 2. The rent is not based on income, which is in compliance with HUD federal standards.
Excuse me, sir.
But in the same application, during the end, it says, if you are looking for an apartment where the rent is based on your
Excuse me, sir.
income,
You have to address the ordinance that is in front of us. And the
Right.
ordinance that in front of us is about the incentive for developers to use energy-efficient and low-impact designs. What you
Right.
seem to be talking about is what they're going to charge, and that is not what this ordinance is about. It's not about how much they're going to charge for rent. Unfortunately, in a public hearing, you only can address what this legislation is about. Now, if you want to talk about that during public comment, you can do that.
right. Here's the thing. I understand what you're saying, but take a moment and look at the last part of the statement, which is low income or low impact designs. That involves the impact statement for the community, correct? So therefore, what I'm speaking to actually has reference to this ordinance. It's actually the body of the ordinance, not just the type of equipment or the type of materials used, but also the impact on the environment around that project or that establishment. So in Ordinance 375, right, we're looking for sustainable development. A part of sustainable development is included in the impact statement. And of course, also, it's made reference in the feasibility study. So actually, I am right on target. So I think I got 1 minute left, right? So here's the misrepresentation. It says you will not be judged by income. But then it says you have to have an income for a one-bedroom, minimum $24,600, maximum $50,000,
Sir,
two-bedroom,
I get it.
$27,000, maximum $57,000, three-bedroom, minimum $30,000, and a maximum $64,000. That is an impact on the community because our local community can't afford that.
I understand that, sir. Thank you. But that has nothing to do, like I said, those comments are more appropriate during public comment period, so
Okay.
you can come back and you can reiterate those remarks then.
Okay. Did the
That's
recorder record those
Yes.
objections?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. There is no other speakers signed up for public hearing at this time. And I want to make you clear, I want to make it clear, public hearing is different than public comment. Public comment will be coming up now, and the people will be speaking at the public comment part. So if you did sign up, you signed up for public comment. Public hearing is only based off of the law, the ordinance law that we're going to be voting on later. So there's a difference. On the public hearing, yes. I'm going to see if you're going to. So, Mr. Anderson, you will be addressing this ordinance that we're proposing to pass. Okay.
I will be addressing the audience. I will be addressing the audience. Good evening. My name is Marlon Anderson, community advocate in the city of Albany, former candidate for mayor in the city of Albany, maybe future candidate for mayor in the city of Albany. I, coming forward, seeing the ordinance, I would think that given the strong reservations and the palpable reservations in this room, I would definitely table the ordinance until it is given greater, how should we say, observance among the public. This is not a sufficient enough public hearing for such a large issue. As you know yourself, Council President Ellis, we both participated some 8 years ago in a major debate about sustainability
Mr.
in the
Anderson,
city.
I'll have to stop you there. This is not about me. This is not about you.
No, this is about my point.
So
It's about my point.
I will have to tell you, direct your comments to the law that we're going to be passing or
and this
voting
is,
on.
and this is my
It's-
point. I
So
understand.
I'm going to give you some leeway, but if you go off another tangent, I'm not.
I fully
Okay,
understand.
okay.
But as I said, it's part and parcel of my point. As I said,
Gotcha. All
we
right.
both participated in an event that fully addressed that. And I would say, given what has been done in the 8 years since that has been done, or should I say, what little has been done, what little has been pursued by the city in focusing, how should we say, addressing the issue, planning the issue, garnering full public opinion, not the opinion of a select few in the city, which is what is done too many times when making decisions and not looking at the overall picture, not looking at all the communities that it affects, just some of the communities. I think that this issue, since it is a community and citywide issue, it needs a greater hearing and greater viewing among all residents in this city before it is pushed forward. So I would advise the council to table the issue and put together a series of community meetings in each community, not just here in City Hall, in each community where the issue can be
Mr.
fully
Anderson,
vetted
I will have
among
to-
the community.
Thank
So
you. I'll have to
you're-
stop you there because
Yes,
once
sir.
again, those are your opinions of what should be done to get people involved. It doesn't speak to this ordinance.
Well,
So I'll
again,
have to stop
well-
you.
Well, I say table the issue. Thank you.
Mr. Ballerin would like to ask you a question. Since
It's taken a long time to get here.
Mr. Ballerin,
So,
I want to
no,
caution
I
you. I
want-
want you to ask him about the ordinance. If it's about
I
outreach,
want to
public.
ask him about the process. Does he understand the process that it's taken to get here? Because do you know that it took several meetings of the planning board? It took meetings of the planning committee. So there has been several meetings where people had the opportunity to have public outcry about this already. So I just want to let you know this is not just the first meeting that we're discussing it. So there has been several meetings before we've gotten here where people have had an opportunity to express themselves. I just want to make sure we make that very clear.
Thank you, Mr.
And-
Ballard.
Yes, I'm fully aware of that, sir. But again, as I said, knowing the process, as you say, knowing the process, knowing how this city operates, and I do have some knowledge of how this city operates, how they present their agendas, how they present their plans. I can truthfully say, and I don't think no one in this building, from the mayor down, can say that this has not been vetted in a manner for the entire public to hear.
Thank you,
Two or
Mr.
three people at a meeting is not a meeting. 4 and 5 people in the city hall and the zoning committee is not a meeting. That is not a mandate of the people. And this needs a mandate of the people before it goes forward. So all I'm saying is, go out to the people, put it in front of the people, put it where the people can have access to it, and then after that is fully done, after it's fully vetted, after it's fully presented, then if it needs to go forward, by all means go forward, because then there can be no complaint, no excuse, fine,
Thank you,
because you
thank you,
did your
Mr.
due diligence. All I'm saying is due diligence.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
You're very,
We
very
get you.
welcome,
We
sir.
got
You're
it.
very-
Thank you so much. Mr. Shea, is it going to be about the?
So I just want to make sure that you understand that what we're talking about here is not the entire USDO comprehensive amendments that have been pending before the planning board. This is a one-page amendment which is similar to lots of other legislation that we adopt here a lot of times with simply a committee meeting. But in this case, this was introduced over 3 months ago. It has been covered in the paper. There have been several meetings of the planning board in which this has been discussed, and there's been an opportunity for public comment. They also held a hearing that was publicly noticed, as our hearing is here today. And we held a meeting of the planning committee last week on this that included this proposal. It was quite well attended because there were also other issues on that particular planning committee meeting. I'm not, in my opinion, there has been actually more public meetings, more public commentary about this than our average legislation. And this is a one-page piece of legislation that the Planning Board has recommended that we adopt. And it is the elimination of a blue roof requirement or incentive. It doesn't prohibit anybody from including a blue roof in their designs if they so choose. It just recognizes that they are not providing any additional stormwater management requirements on developers than already exists when they go for the blue roof. So they're getting this benefit when we, the residents, are getting no additional benefit from them adding a story or having less of a setback. So that doesn't make sense. So we're taking care of essentially a mistake that we made, and we do need to take care of it sooner than later because projects are moving forward and we need to have our USDO or zoning code make sense. When it comes to the green roof, we've asked the water department to assess what kind of benefits we are actually seeing from that. Again, the green roof meets the existing stormwater management requirements, so we're not seeing any direct benefit from the stormwater management requirements. For people who live in Sheridan Hollow, understand that we need to do real additional benefits for the public to see benefits to control our stormwater management. It happens in my neighborhood.
Yes, you're correct.
So I'm
Statement.
asking him if he understands that
Well-
this has been the process and this is all that this particular
Is about.
legislation is about.
Thank you, Mr. Shea.
And in answer to your question, of course, I fully grasp all the processes and actions that goes with that. I'm very well versed in political science, political government, things of that nature. That's not a question of me understanding. What my statement is given the weight of this issue, what is being presented, given the weight of that, given this concern, given the palpable reservation that you feel in this room, I feel that, and it wouldn't affect the process at all for you to table the issue until a full vetting is held. I understand, that you may have put advertisements in the Times Union and things of that nature. I've done that countless times and things of that nature. But the result has been very small. Again, it takes a lot to motivate the people to do these things, and it needs to be understood. Just because you had a quote-unquote great turnout of the usual suspects, which and I know is palpable in almost any and all city meetings, doesn't mean that it's been vetted among the full plebs.
Mr. Anderson, thank
Yes.
you for your comments. We get it. The
Well-
process was followed fully. There was notices sent out, but we thank you for your comments.
And you're
we're
very
closing.
welcome.
Thank
You're
you.
very welcome. And that's all I'm saying. Table the issue.
That now closes the public comment period part. Now we'll be moving on to the public comment period. During this comment, you will be called up because we have so many number of people signed up for public comment. Each speaker will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. After 2 minutes, I will let the speakers know you have 1 minute remaining. At this time, you can speak on any subject you choose to speak on. Unlike the public hearing, council members cannot answer your questions. Please do not question council members. Speak directly to me. You can address me as Mr. Chairman or Mr. President. But you have 3 minutes to speak on any issues you choose to. At the end, at a later time in the agenda, if council members wish to address your issues that you speak upon, they will do so at that time. So please be respectful of others coming behind you because we do have a long, long list of people. So we would like people to be prepared, be ready to speak for 3 minutes, and after your 3 minutes up, move aside so others will be able to speak because there's a large number of people who will be speaking. With that being said, we want everyone to understand, once again, that council members cannot answer your questions. Please do not address council members. Address the chair with your statements. With that being said, can the clerk please call the first speaker?
Marlon Anderson.
in all seriousness, folks, good evening. Again, my name is Marlon
Oh, yes.
Anderson.
Thank you for reminding me, Mr. Anderson. Can you, when you come speak, please state your name and your address for the record. Thank you.
Yes, in all seriousness, folks, my name is Marlon Anderson, community advocate in the city of Albany. I'm coming to speak this evening. I'm from the Center Square section of the city of Albany presently. And I'm coming to speak on serious matters in the city. While, you know, we are enduring national tragedy in the country due to gun violence, I live here in Albany, so I'm focused on what's going on here in Albany. And I have been monitoring the situation of the last few weeks of the gun violence and the unspeakable actions that led to a child being shot. And the only thing I could say, you know, about this not happening again is that it's happened before. 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, a child was killed up in the neighborhood where I resided for decades. And we gnashed our teeth, we wailed, we promised that we were going to make all these changes and that this was going to never happen again. But here we are 12 years later, and it's happened again. So what has changed? What have we done to change it? When are we going to come to grips in this city and understand that this is not a game? This is serious business. People are dying in our streets. People continue to die. Children, young boys, mothers are losing their sons and their daughters because we fail to embrace the need for change. And change is what must be had. We can't continue to be using the usual suspects, funding the usual failed policies. Gun buybacks is not saving lives. Basketball games is not saving lives. Snug is not saving lives. And we have to come to grips and understand that this is not serving the community. We can't continue to deal with this issue at street level.
Because 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Because the streets only keep things going. The streets never solve nothing. The streets keep things going. We got to elevate this if we're going to save our kids. And that's what it should be about. Everybody in this room, the priority right now should be in their minds about saving these kids. And until we elevate this game out the street, we are not going to save our kids. Because the streets don't do nothing but keep the same thing going. That's what the streets was constructed to do, to keep negativity flowing. There's nothing positive about the street game. So we gotta get our solutions to the streets, out of the streets. If we don't do that, all we are gonna do is continue to foster the problem, continue to lose our streets. We gotta change the model for Snug. We gotta hold Trinity Institution accountable for the actions they're taking because they're not putting nothing positive into the community. There's nothing positive coming out of Trinity Institution.
Time is up, Mr. Anderson. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Steve Burke.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Steve Burke. Reside at 11 Clarendon Road in Albany. Okay, thank you. On the subject of this intrusive high-density residential developments around the city, I have just a few comments, and I'll go as quickly as I can. Thank you for your attention. For over 2 years, I've been involved primarily with 1211, but it's symptomatic of the other similar developments around the city. The city has advocated and pursued a number of high-density apartments, as you well know. In almost all cases, these developments have been proposed in mature, established neighborhoods that possess unique and highly desirable attributes and generate significant tax revenue for the city. Various departments within the city have advocated, prioritized the interest of oftentimes out-of-city sponsoring developers above the stated concerns of the residents, repeatedly so. Although the USDO, by its very design, is highly favorable to developers, nonetheless it contains provisions that simply require the consideration and the preservation of these neighborhood characteristics. In theory, the USDO creates a balance between preservation, between saving that character, and moving the city progressively forward. That only works when the regulations of the city and the state are observed and implemented. That is not the case, and I can prove that with correspondence on another project. So projects like the redevelopment of 563 New Scotland parcel, among others, will result in irrevocable harm. I've been in the development business almost 50 years. These things are a technical mess. Not technically speaking, but they are. So checks and balances, of course, are the hallmark of our democracy at all levels of government, including the city. The wishes of those most impacted must be considered and respected, and Albany must restore common checks and balances in this process. It's not too late. Please. The council can act to return rational evaluation of large developments. I urge every member of this council here tonight and otherwise.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. And to support and pass the resolution forwarded by Tom Hoey, Joe Igo, and Jack Flynn, which is 567219R, dealing with seeker, which should have been required on all of these projects given their size, just as a matter of common sense if one doesn't even follow the regulations. So in summary, the residents only request compliance with the USDO, New York State regulations, and common sense. A third-party evaluation of these major developments would be a modest and rational request, given the irreversibility that will result from the construction of the projects. Would be an excellent step in restoring the democratic ideals and process that I do not see in the current planning board. And thank you very much again.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Steve Sokol.
Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening, City Council. My name is Steve Sokol. I live at 36 Tudor Road here in Albany, and a proud neighborhood I live in. I've had several years of experience with the Rezone Albany project and an attempt to try and
Can you move the microphone closer to you so we can hear you?
Okay.
Thank you.
I've already been involved for some 2 years or so with the Rezone project of trying to develop Albany, to continue to make it a lively, vibrant place to live in, and to move forward in Albany. We've had experience, though, over the last several years with major developments that had been before the Albany Planning Board, and we have experience from that. It also was time to revisit the USDO and time to make changes as appropriate and based on our experiences. And I've been very involved with 1211 Western. In particular, I greatly appreciate the efforts of Tom Hoey, my council person, Joe Igo, and Jack Flynn in Resolution 567219R, which would take a look at the effects of major development for the various major projects in the city. In our particular case with 1211 Western, we are served by the Beaver Creek sewer system and the Woodville pumping station. It was my impression that that was full at capacity, which limited the ability to develop the neighborhood. That is certainly something to be taken a look at before we run afoul of DEC requirements under the consent order. Likewise, I am also in favor of Tom Hoey's proposed legislation 158119, which would eliminate the USDO section that gives the planning board the ability to waive its requirements. In particular with 1211 Western, they saw fit to impose 4 requirements on the developer, and we fully expect that those requirements will be satisfied. And we went through the full hearing process and developing a record for developing those specific recommendations for the 4. Having them waive—
You have 1 minute remaining, sir.
Having them waive that would contravene all the wonderful process that occurred so far. In addition, it certainly probably should go without saying, but it certainly deserves to be in writing, that the Building Codes Department should make sure that all of the city's orders, findings, letters, and laws are established and to his satisfaction before any permits are issued for demolition or construction. I greatly appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Can you remind the speakers if they have any written
They can hand them in? All right, thank you. Thank you, Joe. Mr. Igo. Can the clerk please call? Mr. Igo just wanted to remind the audience that if you have any written notes and things you want us to read, submit it to our clerk and we'll copy them and they'll go into the council members' mailboxes. Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Elizabeth Barbarian.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Barbarian. I live at 25 Clarendon Road off Western Avenue, and I was also a 20-year resident of the New Scotland Avenue area, and I'm very familiar with that. And I feel like testifying here is becoming my second job. I think this is the third or fourth time. I just want to make the points that the building that is proposed and maybe in process on Western Avenue, the 1211 Western Avenue building, a 7-story apartment building in a residential neighborhood, is way out of line with any reasonable individual's foresight on what should be happening in our neighborhood. It's got a high impact development, traffic, sound, visual, fire threat, sewage. I also want to thank Tom Hoey for his support, and I support both of his legislative proposals. I witnessed a traffic accident. 2 cars crashed into each other in front of 1211 Western Avenue. All the traffic was routed onto Tudor Road and Clarendon Road, and I think this is a precursor of what's to come. I have been crashed into on Western Avenue. I have been crashed into on Fuller Avenue. There was no full environmental impact statement made on 1211. There was no full traffic study made on 1211. And the decisions that are made here, we are going to have to live with for the rest of our time in this neighborhood. The nearby houses that are for sale on Tudor Road, I brought this up last time. They're selling for tens of thousands of dollars less than their assessed value because of the impending building of 1211. One house is not selling at all. They just changed real estate agents and then sent postcards to people in the neighborhood asking if we could help
You have 1 minute remaining.
asking if we could help sell the property. And of course, we cannot help sell the property because people are realizing that this is no longer a desirable place to live. I encourage you to put a moratorium on development both on New Scotland and at 1211 Western, and look at what this city is creating. This city is full of history. I don't think that the plans for the city go along with the city that most people have moved here for, and I don't see that people are going to leave this suburb in droves to live in a city that has become more violent, more dangerous, and incredibly less desirable to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Beverly Bartiquez.
Good evening. My name is Beverly Bartiquez. I reside at 14 Rapp Road in the historic Rapp Road district. I'm here tonight because I'm trying to make aware the situation that we as a historic African American district from the early 30s are facing with the impending project of Pyramid Corporation. Rap Road has become a thoroughfare and has been for many years now, several years. I have been working tirelessly to try to address the traffic that comes through Rap Road, from the north end of Rap Road traveling south to Western Avenue and on to the Perimeter Ring Road, going on to I-90 or the Northway. It's an ongoing issue that will be compounded if this project should be approved. The City of Albany has no control over whether or not it's approved because it's in the town of Guilderland. However, the city does have control over the traffic flow in the City of Albany. And it's something that needs to be addressed, that must be addressed. 222 residential units that are being proposed will only compound the situation, making it impossible for the residents of Rap Road to get in and out of their driveways safely, or to pick up their mail, or school buses coming to drop off children and pick up children. I need people to be aware and willing
1 minute left, ma'am.
to do something about it. And that's where I stand on this matter. It needs to be addressed. Rap Road traffic needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Dr. Brenda Robinson.
Thank you, Council, for your time. My name is Dr. Brenda Robinson. I live at 266 Livingston Avenue, Albany, New York. I'm president of the Arbor Hill Neighborhood Association. This is yet another summer at the Arbor Hill softball field where citizens were disrespected, especially in a time where violence is so high. I'm almost in disbelief with the behavior exhibited by Mayor Sheehan. I listened to her speak earlier, and she spoke about frustrations. Well, the black man and black woman and other minorities have been frustrated for hundreds of years, yet we still give her respect and the civility that she spoke about. We even made history in Arbor Hill, being the first community ever to have a dumpster placed in the basketball court during the summer youth camp program. Talk about disrespect and frustration. Yet we still give her that respect. Now it seems that the rules of engagement have changed and not for the better. I agree with the mayor sometimes, I disagree, but never, ever give her a level of disrespect. I was surprised to hear when she spoke that this incident had nothing to do with money, yet I constantly heard about the payment that she received from Frank Rogers. I don't understand that, but you know, we have the haves and have-nots. What about that equity people so often talk about down here at City Hall? I would just like to see a few things, because we have a lot of things said already, and I do appreciate the mayor's apology, whether under duress or not. I do appreciate that. I do appreciate her mentioning that there are no longer fees for the teams over at Arbor Hill, and I do appreciate that as well. I would like to see a few things. I would like to see a meeting with the mayor and the community so we can start building bridges back that have been torn down, because we're going in the wrong direction. I would like to see the softball field issues go back to the Arbor Hill Neighborhood Association where it was previously. We had good conversations and worked on things with Jonathan and his team, and we need to get back to that to resolve issues that arise. We need Councilman Kimbrough to be present and assist us, as well as Councilman Robinson. And I do thank you, Councilman Robinson, for being available. and being responsive to our needs. And this invitation also goes out to the rest of the Common Council because I appreciate all that you do. We need to see accountability for all parties. And last but not least, we, the folks that look like me, aren't going anywhere. We're going to be right here in Arbor Hill. We're looking for your help. We're looking for your support. And we have to move forward from this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. We do appreciate that, but the reason why I tamper it down is because we have so many speakers, and I want to get people on and off, on and off. So if we have to stop it because of clapping, it just prolongs the evening. So please be respectful. We understand, we're going to have some good speakers come in, but we just want to make sure people get on and off so we're not here all night. So with that being said, can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Nancy Benedict. Nancy Benedict.
My name is Nancy Benedict. I live at 31 Forest Road in Delmar. Now, I understand that you have on your agenda tonight to approve Don Hyman for a new 3-year term on the board of PEG, Public Education and Government Channel, in other words, Channel Albany. Don Hyman has been a good board member. He has attended the meetings, which is more than some of the other members of the board have done, and I think he should be approved for a new term. Now, Don Hyman's new term is supposed to end on July 1st, 2022, so I'm assuming his old term expired on July 1st, 2019, and I'm wondering why the Common Council is so far behind the 8 ball that they are approving him now for a new term when his old term has been expired for over a month. This should have been done in June. However, there's some much more serious problems with the PEG Oversight Board, the membership you have on the PEG Oversight Board. For one thing, there's one seat on the board, which is a seat that the Common Council is supposed to fill, that has been empty for 2 years. Now, when are you going to fill that seat? And there's 2 board members, Tracy Ann Gordon and Ocasio Williams, who have terrible attendance records. Tracy missed 9 out of the last 13 meetings, and Ocasio has been a no-show 55 or 60% of the time. I don't know when these 2 people come up for...
You have 1 minute remaining, ma'am.
...new terms, yes, but I hope that something is done and that these people are not, these 2 people are not approved when they come up for reappointment for new terms. Thank you.
Thank you. Call the next speaker.
Timothy Looker.
I'm Timothy Looker, 146 Winthrop Avenue, and I'm here to speak about the amendments to the USDO. First of all, I'd like to thank members Hoey, Flynn, and Joe Igo for putting forth these amendments, 567219R. The gist of this is that the water sewage system in Albany is interconnected in complex ways, so that large development in one location impacts water and sewage management in other locations. For this reason, a full seeker should be done for all large developments in Albany. And I can speak personally from about 15 years ago that I had 2 sewage inflows into my house, and my next door neighbor had one 2 weeks ago. And so there's still problems, and this is in Melrose neighborhood. There's still problems, and putting up these big buildings it just seems to be like it's going to exacerbate the problem. I'd also like to show support for Tom Hoey's proposed legislation that would eliminate the USDO section that gives the planning board the ability to override anything that is in the USDO, and also not allowing demolition or building permits to be issued until any directives by city departments and state and federal departments and agencies are completed. I'm especially concerned about 211 Western Avenue being one of the first, and also 563 New Scotland. A lot more needs to be looked at here, and I'm going to leave a little more time for everybody.
Thank you, sir. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
James Tucker.
Good evening. I'm here to
Mr. Tucker,
my
just
support
state your
for-
name and your
my name
address
is
for the
James
record.
Tucker. I'm a resident of the south end of Albany. I'm here to register my support for Decky Lawson and to register a complaint about the total disrespect that the mayor seems to have for the minority community in the city of Albany, her and her group of progressives. It just seems like in the minority community, we're last. We get last for everything. I took a walk around the city today, and I walked to Ontario Street and Madison Avenue and showed how they did VI basketball court. Then I walked over to Woodlawn, and I'm looking over there how they got the 2 courts over there nice and done. It's clean over there, and how they got drainage. Then I come back down to my neighborhood on Elizabeth Street and watch how they piecemeal the Elizabeth Street basketball court, and how they it looks like they're waiting forever to do the line. I think they're waiting for the end of the summer to do it, so we can't do nothing down there, but we're gonna do it anyway. But it's just the point of the total disregard and disrespect, especially from the recreation department. We got kids that a month ago, they went to Virginia and they won a very prestigious tournament, but nobody gave them kids credit for that. We got another child in this city that's a world champion boxer on the amateur level, and they don't recognize that. Our kids don't get recognized. All our kids do is get, pardon my expression, but all our kids get is shitted on. And I'm about tired of it. Now we trying to do something for some kids on Elizabeth Street downtown where they shooting at. All we trying to do is get them to shoot baskets instead of shooting guns, and we don't get no support. You should take a ride down there. I invite any of you to come downtown on Elizabeth Street and just take a look at it. Just take a look at it. It's disrespectful, yo. It's very disrespectful. And we about tired of it. Now it's time for us as black people, it's time for us to stand up, yo. It's time for us to start taking of our own, because we tired of it. We're getting real tired of it. Matter of fact, I need from one of you person, I need a stack of registration forms, because each one of my kids, I'm giving them a voter registration form to take home. I need somebody in your family to register, because we coming. Because we tired and we coming, yo. Because we got an outsider now running this city, and she's very disrespectful. She came downtown last Tuesday, and I approached her to ask her about the Elizabeth Street basketball court, and she brushed me off so bad that a little 11-year-old kid across the street, he said, "That's the mayor?" And he felt it. Come on, yo. I'm done, yo. I gotta go.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Tina Lieberman.
Hi, thank you. My name is Tina Lieberman. I live at 30 Aspen Circle. And actually, now, as a member of the Sustainability Advisory Committee, I came to give you some updates on some issues that were before the committee. Particularly, I wanted to give you an update on Resolution 39.6118 by Council Member Fahey, to explore joining a Capital Region Community Choice Aggregation Program, to negotiate and enter into energy supply contracts with energy service companies, and I might add for renewable energy, or as much renewable energy as will save people money over the current national grid pricing. So this resolution is currently in the Planning, Economic Development, and Land Use Committees, and I just wanted to give the Common Council an update that there is a aggregation for renewable, or as much renewable energy as possible, forming right now in the Capital District. And I wanted to let you know that they will be going for an RFP right in the new year, and hopefully will be operational by next summer. So I'm telling you this because this is our opportunity to review, go back and look at that resolution and look at getting some more information about joining this aggregation. So the towns that are part of this aggregation are Bethlehem, New Scotland, Guilderland, Saratoga Springs, and there's a bunch of municipalities in Warren County that will be joining. That gives them already over 40,000 meters participating. So they have enough to start the aggregation. Anything above that is sort of like icing on the cake, because it will give us more negotiating power for electricity rates and make them be even lower.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. The municipalities now that are interested in reviewing the proposal and having presentations made by the administrator that was chosen is Voorheesville, Knox, Niskayuna, Schenectady, and even Troy. Troy passed the same resolution that Councilmember Fahey is proposing, so they are actively exploring. Mega is the chosen administrator for this particular aggregation, and other existing aggregations are Westchester County, the Southern Tier, and we have one that will be starting soon in the Mid-Hudson Valley, which includes the city of Poughkeepsie. The other thing I wanted to, so what I would just say is I would recommend that you invite the chosen administrator, Mega, to make a 30-minute presentation here at a future Common Council meeting as soon as possible, so you can get the latest information and ask questions. And the only other update I wanted to give you is that I had mentioned that we were applying for a food waste reduction grant for the city from the DEC. We partnered with Radix to submit the grant. It was for $240,000, and we got the grant.
Thank you, ma'am. Time is up. Thank you. Mr. Kimbrough, we've reached our 30-minute mark on this period of public comment. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to extend public comment, 30 minutes.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Public comment period extended. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Vincent Raguso.
My name is Vincent Raguso. I live at 13 Beach Avenue, Albany, New York. And I'm here to talk in favor of Tom Hoey, Joe Igo, Jack Flynn resolution 56-72.19R, and is a full seeker report to be done on all large development, especially on 563 New Scotland Avenue and 1211 Western Avenue, in order to avoid any potential burden on Albany taxpayers with the cost created by problems the developer failed to foresee. An EIS will ensure that the development is in the best interest of the taxpayer. The other one is Tom Hoey's proposed legislation that would eliminate the USDO section that gives the planning board the ability to override anything that is in the USDO. And second, not allow demolition or building permits to be issued until all directives by the city departments and the state and federal departments and agencies are completed. With that being said, that was tabled at the planning committee. I would like to have those two things brought back to the Planning Committee ASAP. I understand that the introducers were not present at that time, and due to the lateness of the email that came out, the second reminder came out on the 29th at 2:12, I got it, and unfortunately I didn't open up to 4:30 and I could not make it. So I'd like to see those two things brought back to the committee, and also have public comment along with the introducers. With that being said, this came from Jamal Robinson, and it's been haunting me ever since I read this. And this is about the shooting where the child got injured. And it says, today's shooting that resulted in a child being injured by a stray bullet is senseless, angering, and disheartening. We are the solution to this issue of gun violence. Encourage your friends or your family members who perpetrate violence to put the guns down and find other ways to resolve their personal differences. Enough is enough. I remember coming to this council approximately 8-9 years ago with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Leonard Morgenbesser, who came here repeatedly every 2 weeks and talked about how he would solve some of the problems that we're having. The exact same problem that Jamal Robinson wrote about today with these guns. And he wanted to set up a task force where he could find out where these guns were coming from, and if he knew where they were coming from, he felt that he could halt them. So I don't know if that's the way to go, but we definitely have a problem, not only in Albany, but the entire United States. This is not a white problem, a black problem, a yellow problem, or a green problem. This is our problem. And I'm embarrassed to have Jamal have to write something like this in the city of Albany that I love so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ragusa. Clerk, please call the next speaker.
Maura McNulty.
Good evening. My name is Maura McNulty, and I live on Claremont Street in Albany. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of a resolution calling for an environmental impact statement for 563 New Scotland. Given the financial, logistical, and social costs and potential benefits of large-scale development, I think it's only common sense to surface all the potential issues so that we can get the project done right the first time. If there's no impact study, then there's really no transparency in the process, and it's impossible for ordinary citizens to trust that the finished project will best serve the long-term interests of the neighborhood and the city as a whole. In other words, the EIS process is just good governance, and I'm assuming that it goes without saying that proposed projects should meet the highest standards in terms of sustainable building practices. The legislation proposed by Tom Hoey, 1581-19, that will require the planning board to abide by the regulations in the USDO also strikes me as just basic good governance. If the planning board can override the USDO at will, then there's no real way for the citizens and taxpayers of Albany to influence the development process through our elected council members. We all want to see Albany progress in the 21st century, but that progress ought to be informed by a multiplicity of viewpoints. Just because a specific developer makes a particular proposal does not automatically mean that that proposal is the best way to go. Likewise, as a matter of good governance, I support the portion of the Hoey legislation which requires that developers have all the relevant paperwork completed before demolition and building permits are issued. Finally, if we've learned anything about the environment in recent decades, it's that everything is connected to and affected by everything else. For that reason, I'd like to commend Council Members Hoey, Igo, and Flynn for proposing a resolution 561719R that requires a full secret for large-scale developments in Albany. This will ensure that new buildings can be designed and scaled in such a way that our already stressed water infrastructure is not overwhelmed. Thank you for all your hard work on behalf of all of us and for your attention here tonight.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Terry Crawley.
Good evening. My name is Terry Crowley. I'm from 393 2nd Street, Albany, New York. Lifetime residence, born and raised, 65 years old. Okay, I'm here to speak on the Arbor Hill softball team. That softball team field is older than me. There's never been no commotion, no nothing. Our young people, they need that field. The basketball field, they need that field. We're trying to keep our young kids off the streets. Everything in Albany has them closed down. Community centers, everything for our youth. Nobody wants to see a tragic of their kid dying. I lost mine at 14, been dead 29 years. I don't want to see no parent go through that, okay? Far as that softball field, like there's other fields. If they want Kathy Sheehan or whoever want teams to come out, you got the softball, the field up there on, what is it, Bleecker Terrace. It's bigger than Arbor Hill Community Center. These kids need that every day, Monday through Sunday. It's at least 100 kids up there. Far as the food court, she ain't been on board 4 years yet. It's only been 3 years that they didn't do lunches and stuff, okay? Those kids enjoy that. They look forward to coming there every day. So why would you take something from our youth to put them in the street? It doesn't make sense to me, okay? This is something they need. Our parents appreciate that the kids have somewhere to go, not to be on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Margie Sheehan.
Hello, my name is Margie Sheehan. I live at 32 Buckingham Drive. My husband and I have lived at that address in Albany for 20 years. And I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the environmental impact statement for 563 New Scotland Avenue. I understand that the discussion regarding the resolution about the impact statement was tabled at the planning meeting on the 29th of July. I'm sorry that I didn't know about the planning meeting. If I had known, I would have been there to speak in support of the environmental impact statement. I think it's important that this body understand that a lot of residents in the city of Albany are interested in diverse neighborhoods. We're interested in walkable cities. We're interested in positive, smart planning and smart development. And I can't even conceive that smart planning wouldn't include environmental impact statements for giant buildings that are being proposed in our neighborhoods. I would like to also support Tom Hoey, Joe Igo, and Jack Flynn's resolution 567219R. I think a full secret should be done for all large development in Albany. And I think that Tom Hoey's proposed legislation regarding the USDO, my support is also there for that. I would like to also speak in support of the comments that have been made here tonight with regard to guns in our city as well. I'm also very concerned. And I think that we see that nationwide, and as a city, I hope we can come together to solve that problem. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Alicia Parker.
Hello, my name's Alicia Parker. I reside at 191 Sheridan Avenue. I was born and raised in Albany, New York. Recently relocated back here in November. And it's sad to say and to see that Albany is still what it was when I left. It does not look like there's been any progression here. And what I'm trying to understand for the Arbor Hill softball park, what is really the purpose of teams that pay to play? What is their purpose there in a lower income neighborhood? That ball field is there to serve the people of that community. Where are our teams that can't pay to play? Where are they supposed to play? Can they come to the other communities and play? We can't because we don't have the means to do so. So for me, I see it as blatant economic discrimination of those who are in a lower economic bracket. And this discrimination has more of an impact on a black community because we make up the larger percentile of those who are economically disadvantaged. I look at it also, as you've seen, these teams that are made up of people who will not shop, live, nor play or send their children to our schools. They are now playing in the fields that we have always played in. What is their purpose? I don't see it. It looks like gentrification to me. You make it look, oh, Arbor Hill's not so bad. They'll come from this community to play, so it's okay to live and work here as well. So what happens to the people that are being displaced?
Thank you, ma'am. Clerk, please call the next speaker.
Decky Lawson.
How you doing? My name is Decky Lawson. I live at 18 Justin Street, Albany, New York. I'm the commissioner of the Arbor Hill Softball Complex. First of all, I just want to address the situation that happened up at the Arbor Hill Sports Complex. It wasn't about them taking the Arbor Hill Softball Complex. It was more about them taking our time off of the field that we are using almost every day and limited us to a certain amount of time per week. Arbor Hill Sports Complex is a complex that we have over 150 kids a day. Adult-wise, we have over 100 adults a day. On a Friday night, while our ladies is playing, we have over 300 fans a day. No ballpark, no place in the Capital District is bringing in that kind of people. Nowhere. You can go to a Valley Cats game, you're not going to get that many people to come up there and support. On an address of the thing that we have with the Park and Recreation, I was asked in February to submit a field permit and a team permit. After that, I had 3 meetings, 2 with the people that's working at Park and Recreation, where they told me that we did not need a field permit or a team permit because we were a city-funded program and we were going to do the same thing that the kids are doing across the street to the adult program. So they told me that I didn't need a schedule or anything. And now they're coming out with this schedule thing that they asked me for in February. Yes, they did ask me for that schedule. And then when we had a closing meeting, which was like 4 or 5 of us in that meeting, they clearly told us that we did not need it as long as we were doing scheduled programming. I came here on July 3rd, me and my counterpartner, Mr. Robinson. We came here on July 3rd for a meeting, which we were ignored. If they wanted a schedule, they could have got another schedule right then and there if they wanted. We never got called in for a meeting, never nothing. And then as of last week, the mayor comes up to the Arbor Hill Sports Complex, screaming and yelling. That's not my style. I don't scream and yell at females. Her counterparts came up with, that's not my style. I'm gonna keep it professional.
You have a minute remaining.
Thank you. I'm gonna keep it professional. And that's a park right there where we've been at for over 60 years. Is a legacy. And I'm gonna try my hardest to carry on that legacy of the Arbor Hill Sports Complex. That's all I'm gonna say. Thank you.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Danielle Williams.
My name is Danielle Williams. I live at 9 Pico Road, Clifton Park, New York. Born and raised in Albany, New York, Arbor Hill, Orange Street. I'm in Arbor Hill every day after work. I work downtown Albany. I see the hundreds of kids. I'm there on Fridays and I see the hundreds of families. And now I see that it's being taken away. Outside leagues that have money is taking away time away from families in their own backyards. And I witnessed the mayor come to Arbor Hill and scream on Decky and inflation. And I was appalled because they do so much good work in the community. These men keep families together. They keep families off the streets. Not just kids, but families, adults that could be doing something else that wouldn't make no sense. So oppression is real, people, and I'm paying attention. Even though I'm not a resident of Albany no more, I'm here. And injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. And the city of Albany needs to pay attention. Decky and inflation are doing a good job. Uptown and downtown is being oppressed. They need more funding for the things for the families and the kids. It's sickening. Even when I was here, and I'm a mother of a son who's incarcerated, and I know plenty of mothers that are close to me whose sons have been murdered. And yet you say you want to stop the violence and you take away what little they have? Are you kidding me? You take away their own backyards for people that are okay? They have many parks over money. Money over people. And that's a damn shame. And these little kids right here, pretty soon they won't have nothing because it's all about money. And that's a shame because they need somewhere to go, and so do their families. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Jamila Ridley, Danae McCall, Sion Butler, and Shabar Perkins.
How you doing? My name is Kaisha Brown. These are my grandchildren. The softball field is my town. That's where we do everything at. My kids go there. I got 17 grandkids. And also myself, I hung in the softball field all my life. I've been here 114 years and still going. Can't take that away from us. We got to give it to our kids just like they gave it to us. They gave it to us, and we got to give it to my babies right here. You understand? You've got your parks. How you going to take our park away? Where else they going to go? In my room, in my living room, tearing up more of my stuff? No, send them outside. Go outside in the park. I'll come out there with you. Go play basketball. Go out there and be with your friends. Go out there and be with your cousins. Got to be with everybody. It's a unity thing. It's called Wakanda. It's about unity. You can't take the unity away from us. This is all we gave. My mother gave it to me. My grandparents gave it to my mother. Their grandparents gave it to them. They go down the line. I'm quite sure you've got grandparents. You've got mothers and fathers and people who done died and this, that you worried about. We worried about mine. These are my babies. We live here, and I ain't going nowhere. I'm going to stay right here in Arbor Hill softball field. Rather you tear it down or build it over, I'm still going to be there. And they going to be there right with me. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Kaisha Brown.
Thank you.
Charles Obar Robinson.
Charles Obar Robinson, 404 Livingston Avenue, Albany, New York, lifelong resident. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but then again, I just have to speak the truth. There's a reason why the powers that be allow what happened and what happens daily to happen. There's too many people on the planet. The poor, they don't want the poor to multiply. You know, the poor's not getting it. They don't want the poor to multiply. So when the poor scream, you know me, I scream. I'm the angry black man. But there's some serious things going on the planet right now. And the most serious thing that's going on right now is the Albany County landfill. Where are we going to put our trash? See, all that ties in with the softball field. All this ties in with the poor communities. Is deep. It's intricate. You know, she's not going to run for mayor next term. We all know that. Why? Because the biggest problem is going to be our landfill. We have no place to put our trash. Our community is responsible for too much daily waste. That's why they acting like they acting, because we're not getting it. Our consumption level is so high right now that it's killing the planet. This gratification, our self-gratifications right now. All this is tying in right now. The shootings, they want them to happen. They have to happen. It's scary, but it has to happen. It's 7 billion people on the planet. It's predicted to be 10 billion people on the planet by 2044, 2050. They can't feed who's on the planet right now. They're cutting our food with plastic. They have to cut it because we're not getting it. So when the powers that be don't understand us, the only thing that we have to go on is our culture. Basketball that you was talking about earlier, Mr. Marlon Anderson. Yeah, that's very important.
You have a minute left, Mr. Robinson.
That's very important. Basketball. When you see how the NBA just turned, it used to be the National Black Association, now no more. Everything gets taken away from us. We're used to that. We're used to that. It's almost like we became immune to it because we're so used to it. So, Mr. Ellis, when you have to work a little bit extra tonight, you know, because a few extra people showed up that don't normally showed up, so you have to work tonight, you know, this is just one of the nights you have to work. Because I done been here plenty times when you was in and out. Plenty times when you were in and out. This is one of the very rare times in my life when I came down here and I actually seen people who look like me expressing what they actually feel and deal with on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Can the clerk please call the next speaker?
Ali.
Good evening. So, let me start again.
State your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Ali Willis, Albany resident. Let me start again. The reason why I spoke the way I did about the ordinance that you had, you know, before you is because I know that you do not understand the construction industry. I am the president, or I'm the humble president of ECWA Local 102, a construction organization. Throughout the state so far, we've already trained 10,000 people. In Albany, we trained 2,000. This that you hear, the cry about the 25 buildings going up, the water problem, the sewage problem, the park, the community being dissatisfied. If you remember last year, when half of you came in, I told you this would happen. Not because I could see the future, but because we worked on many projects of this magnitude. We did Fulton Street restoration in Brooklyn. We did a lot of organizational work with different youth groups throughout the nation. In all the other places that we're working now, New Jersey, the mayor and everyone is working with us. We're having an enjoyable time creating new work opportunities, right? Pushing the individuals that are building these projects to know and to understand or to relay what an impact statement is. What is an impact statement? An impact statement says, I come before you, I'm building this building, This is how much water I'm going to use. These are the different materials I'm going to use. These are the new jobs I'm going to bring to your area. I'm going to put a park over here. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to facilitate the growth of the community that you allow me to make money in. You don't see that because that's not your field. We've been in construction over 30 years. As a matter of fact, we left the industry and started working with youth in the street, and we've saved a lot of them. It's not too late for you too here to start to save them, but you must engage them. I spoke previously, even with the mayor. You no longer have a $10 million problem every year. Your deficit is gone because the governor has conceded to the fact that you need $10 million. You didn't have any resolution to that until I spoke the truth to it.
You have 1 minute remaining, sir.
Okay, thank you. You had no resolution to that until I gave you the answer. I'm giving you the next answer. You already know the city is being fined $800 a day because the water in the Hudson is polluted. You cleared all these other projects to come through. So everybody that is building comes through one of you. But yet and still, none of the community gets a job. I pleaded with you with the Albany High School project. You said 7 years, $180 million. How many community residents are working on that site? None. Artie Arborough, I was here when the ink was still wet on the check, $87 million. And look at what you're dealing with now. You got an ordinance talking about in order to get in, you have to fit in this tax bracket. Your time
is up,
is
sir.
against federal regulations. And I am going to initiate the community to put in a federal lawsuit.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. This time that concludes public comment period at this time. We're moving on to the next approval of previous minutes from our last meeting. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 15th, May 20th, June 3rd, June 8th, July 1st, and July 15th.
Can I get all those in favor? Minutes approved. Consideration of local laws. Mr. Kimbrough.
Local laws are held.
Thank you. Reports of any standing committees. Ms. Fahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Planning and Economic Development Committee met on July 29th Resolution 5572-19R to confirm the appointment of Adriana LeBlanc as a member of the BZA was passed out with a positive recommendation. Ordinance 1051-19, an ordinance to in relation to incentives for developers to use energy-efficient and low-impact design. That has to do with eliminating the blue roof incentive and suspending the green roof incentive through June 30th, 2020. That was also passed out of committee with a positive recommendation. And Resolution 5672-19R, which asks the Planning Board to require a full environmental impact statement under the State Environmental Quality Review law for 563 New Scotland. That resolution was tabled. During that meeting on that resolution, there was a full discussion of SEEKR, the State Environmental Quality Review Act. We had the Director of Planning there, as well as a staff member and an attorney from Corporation Counsel's Office who have significant experience with the SEEKR. So there was quite a bit of discussion about it. One of the things that they did indicate, because this resolution calls for considering reasonably related cumulative impacts, it asked for a full environmental impact statement because of cumulative impacts of the development project, not only at 563 New Scotland, but 363 Ontario Street, where the old Palladium was. They're concerned that there's already been a negative declaration regarding the environmental impact on the Palladium project, so they see a specific problem with this resolution. So this resolution has been tabled. Thank you.
Okay. Any more committee reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consideration of ordinances. Mr. Hoey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I noticed ordinance 15.81.19.
Thank you, Mr. Hoey. Can the clerk please read the ordinance?
An ordinance amending Chapter 375 of the Code of the City of Albany by repealing Subdivision 3 of Subsection B of Section 375E 14 and requiring that any permit for the purposes of demolition or building be approved only if all relevant prior approvals or conditions by city, county, state, or federal departments or agencies are met.
Thank you. Mr. Kimbrough.
It's referred to planning.
Thank you. Ms. Fahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice ordinance 158119.
Majority.
A majority consent for 158119
Thank you.
and ask for its introduction.
It's 1681-19. Yes. Ms.
I'd
Kimbrough.
like to make a motion that we add ordinance 168119 by majority consent.
Oh,
Is there a second? All those in favor?
aye.
Motion passed. Ms. Fahey.
Thank you. Mr. President, I noticed ordinance 168119. Ask for its introduction.
Can the clerk please read the ordinance, please?
An ordinance amending Chapter 375-3 of the Code of the City of Albany in order to clarify the approval process for telecommunications installations.
Mr. Kimbrough.
So was that for passage?
She didn't ask, she did planning.
You didn't, okay, goes to planning.
Thank you. Moving on to ordinances held, Ms. Doesschate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice ordinance 10.51.19 and ask for its passage and a roll call vote thereon.
Thank you, Ms. Doesschate. Can the clerk please read the ordinance?
An ordinance amending Chapter 375 of the Code of the City of Albany in relation to incentives for developers to use energy-efficient and low-impact designs.
Is there any discussion on the ordinance? Ms. Doesschate.
Yes, I'd like to clarify a few things about this ordinance. This ordinance is just a common sense ordinance. It corrects a mistake that we made when we adopted the USDO. This particular proposal actually came out of the comprehensive amendments to the USDO currently pending before the Planning Board. I noticed the suspension of the green roof and blue roof incentives in that back in April, and thought it's appropriate to investigate further and then bring this forward. In my investigation, I found that the blue roof incentive provides no additional benefits to the residents or the city above and beyond what we currently require developers to provide in the way of stormwater management. So if you put on a blue roof, that can count towards the stormwater management requirement, and that indeed is how the water department is interpreting this and enforcing it. So in exchange for the incentive for this kind of feature, we have been allowing developers to have lesser setbacks or adding a story to a building when indeed there is no reason to do so, since they're doing something that they're essentially already required to do in terms of something that benefits the city in terms of stormwater management. It was as a result of my conversations with Mr. Glass and Neil O'Connor of the Water Department, in which we fully vetted that particular issue, and it was recommended by the administration that we actually eliminate the blue roof requirement rather than suspend it, because there is no recognizable additional benefit. The effect of that current incentive of adding a story for putting on a blue roof is, currently we have everything. We have an agreement about the number of stories any building will be in any given zone. That was fully vetted when the USDO went into effect. People need a variance if they're going to exceed that, and in this particular case, if you added a blue roof, you essentially got an extra story without going through the variance process, without having to prove any additional hardship or benefit to the city, et cetera. And the whole intent of the incentives was to encourage developers to do things that would be additionally beneficial to the city. For example, our affordable housing incentive, where if you add 20% affordable housing, you get to increase by a story. That will still be in effect under this particular provision, and the hope is that by eliminating a feature, an incentive for a feature that does nothing to benefit us, that developers that do want to build an extra story will be adding affordable housing. That's very significant when you look at the developments that we have been seeing go before the planning board and being approved, and ones that are also getting tax incentives. They're all market rate housing these days. So we need to build in to our designs incentives for affordable housing. So by eliminating a blue roof incentive, we will be encouraging developers to be looking at the affordable housing incentive instead. This ordinance also suspends the green roof incentive in the same way that it eliminates the blue roof requirement for all applications essentially that were submitted between June 30th, 2019 and June 30th, 2020. What this will do will allow the city and us to study a little bit further different kinds of incentives and how we can beef this up. The reality is, when I asked the water department, what benefits are we going to see? Are we seeing from this? They can't quantify it because we don't have any standards for our green roofs. So we're giving an incentive and allowing people to build without having established a standard for what the green roof is actually going to be comprised of. Is it going to have 3 inches of soil to retain water? Is it going to have 10 inches of soil? Is it for half the roof? Is it for 3/4 the roof? Is it for the full roof, et cetera? So there are also issues with regard to the green roof also counting towards the stormwater management requirement. So again, by suspending that, it should encourage developers to be looking at the affordable housing piece, which I fully support. As somebody said, essentially the current blue roof requirement is simply a giveaway to developers. It was commented in social media that this is a strong-arm tactic to force the administration to impose a moratorium. It couldn't be a greater misrepresentation. I want to make sure people understand This was in the administration's proposal for the USDO. I'm taking it out and basically making sure that the mistake isn't made permanent and that we act on it now that we recognize that this mistake be addressed. It will not stop any developments currently approved or any currently approved or pending developments. It will reduce the number of stories that the automatic extension of a story by a story for any development that uses blue roof technology, and we'll suspend it for the green roof until we have a chance to study that further. So I want to note again that this was on the planning board agenda for 3 months. They held a hearing in addition to had public comment periods on it, and we had a committee meeting on this as well as tonight's hearing. While I respect the comments in opposition to it, those comments have to do with what this ordinance could do and does not do, what the USDO could do. And that is something we can have any member of the council also introduce to address those particular issues. But it is not a rationale for not acting on correcting a mistake that we made 2 years ago. So I ask for your support on this ordinance.
I will be voting for this, and I appreciate all the work that Judy has done to bring this to our attention and to basically push it through earlier than just waiting for a whole package of amendments to the code. I'm one of those people who voted for the original code, and when I looked at the book and saw mixed-use neighborhood edge or mixed-use neighborhood center and saw a lot of diagrams of 3-story buildings, I sort of assumed that's what we were voting for. And it was only when a developer came looking to build on 60 Colvin Avenue with pictures of a 4.5-story building that I started to raise the question, and I realized that somehow there was built into the ordinance, I think more certainly by my omission for not, really knowing as much about it as maybe I should have, that, oh yeah, if he did these simple procedures, he could automatically go up to 4.5 stories. So I appreciate the fact that you brought it to our attention. I appreciate the work you did in front of the planning board, and I appreciate the fact that you're separately carrying it, that we aren't just waiting for a huge package of amendments, that this warranted individual attention, and it's timely that we're voting on it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too will be supporting this. I want to thank the sponsor, Ms. Doesschate, for the work that she did to discover that that there was duplication with regarding the blue roof, and that incentive really isn't necessary. Also, I support the idea of the green roof and taking a closer look and developing standards with regards to that. And I'm especially supportive of that this may indeed encourage developers to consider the 20%, the affordable housing incentive, because all of us want to see mixed income in these development projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ballard.
I want to thank Councilwoman Doesschate for getting this in front of the board and getting this to the planning board. And I want to thank Councilwoman Fahey for bringing it to the committee to get it here for a vote. One of the speakers spoke that hasn't been enough public input. I respectfully disagree. There have been several opportunities at the planning board to address them on this issue. I've been at those boards. I've asked them to act on this. I've asked them to put this in front of us for us to vote on, because we've got to look at the situation that we're in and see where we make mistakes and admit it and correct it. And this is one of those times we need to correct our errors. It was an error to push this forward, incentive that gave developers an incentive to build more than what the rezone would allow without these type of initiatives. And I like to look at numbers. 7 developers have taken this initiative. 7. How many has taken the affordable housing? The affordable housing initiative says the same thing. You can add an other layer, another story, if you go from 5% to 20% of affordability. 0. Not one developer has taken up that incentive. That is a problem. As someone who understands that our city is 25% in poverty, 25% of our residents live in poverty. Our median income is $45,000. As someone who lived most of their life in that 25% and has lived the rest of that life in that 45,000 range, it's not easy. And when I see one of these developments that's taken down 24 units in a reasonably affordable area, where rents were going for a 3-bedroom for roughly between $900 and $1,200 a month, and is going to build 99 units, where rents for a 3-bedroom are going to go between $1,800 and $2,200 a month. That's a problem. It's a problem when you make it so unaffordable that you lose a large base of your residents. I've said at the planning board meeting, and I'll say it here, if all we had were these luxury buildings, I couldn't afford to live here. My family wouldn't have been able to afford to move here. Part of what makes this city such a great city is that you could be a teacher. You could be a non-for-profit worker. You could go into government and still own in our neighborhoods, still live in our cities. So that's what this is about. This is not an anti-development proposal. This is about making sure developers are held accountable, and when they get the opportunity to do an extra story, let's make that affordable housing initiative what they use. Because what we don't want to see is you build luxury buildings here, and then you put affordable housing there. That's not how you fix communities. Building new affordable housing only concentrates poverty. That does not do anything to bring the neighborhood up. Mixed-use projects are what's actually going to improve our neighborhoods. So I appreciate the work that was done by our council members. I appreciate the fact that the planning board, and I don't always agree with the planning board, and I appreciate the fact that they pushed this forward for us to be able to vote on here today, and I will be voting for this. Thank you.
Thank you. So no further discussion. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anani?
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Ballerin?
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ms. Doesschate?
Yes.
Ms. Fahey? Ms. Farrell?
Yes.
Mr. Hoey?
Yes.
Mr. Igo?
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Johnson? Mr. Kimbrough?
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, co-sponsor.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
11 in the affirmative.
Ordinance passes. Mr. Kimbrough?
Remaining ordinances held.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to introductions of resolutions. Ms. Douschae.
I noticed Resolution 57.81.19R for introduction, and I'm asking for its passage in a roll call vote.
Yes, Mr. Shea. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council certifying local adjustments to the adjusted base proportions of the homestead and non-homestead classes for the Albany City School District for school tax purposes for the 2019 tax year pursuant to New York State Real Property Law, Article 19.
Is there any discussion on the resolution? Mr. Shea.
Yes, I want to clarify why I'm asking for action on this as compared to what I was saying in caucus. Having read the resolution and taken a look at the resolution that it refers to that we passed in at the end of 2018, I'm not 100% sure it is necessary, but it is appropriate based upon my prior discussions last year. Instead of adopting different proportions than what we have adopted, which has occurred in the past, this resolution is simply adopting, is basically having the council put the school district on notice of what our homestead, non-homestead rates were that we adopted for our own budget and for our own tax rate, which is what they can also adopt. But they cannot adopt something different than that. So the resolution is simply adopting what we already adopted and allowing them to use a homestead, non-homestead rate. That is significant in terms of we do want the school district to be able to use a homestead, non-homestead differential for the same reason that we do it. If we had a 50-50 rate for homeowners, it would be potentially a devastating increase in taxes. Again, I don't know that we need to do this, being that they could rely on our resolution from 2018, but out of respect for the fact that they are asking for us to certify those rates to them, I do think it's appropriate to pass that, and that is why I am asking us to do that now as the school district is preparing to send out its tax bills in early September.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anani.
Yes.
Mr. Ballerin.
Yes.
Ms. Doesschate. Ms. Fahey. Ms. Farrell.
Yes.
Mr. Hoey. Mr. Igo. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Kimbrough. Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mr. Robinson. 11 in the affirmative.
Resolution passes. Mr. Kimbrough, majority consent? $58, is that an MC? It's an MC. No? No, it's not. 59 is MC. Gotcha. No, it's not. You're introducing it on behalf of Applyrs. Mr. Kimbrough? I think it was Judy.
No, it's Judy. Yeah. Have I been recognized, Mr.
Yes.
President?
Mr. Shea.
Thank you. I notice Resolution 58.81.19R for introduction and passage.
Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council consenting to an adjustment in salary for certain positions for the 2019 budget.
Is there any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anani.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Ballerin.
Yes.
Ms. Doesschate. Ms. Fahey. Ms. Farrell.
Yes.
Mr. Hoey. Mr. Igo. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Kimbrough. Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mr. Robinson. 11 in the affirmative.
Resolution passes. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. make a motion to add Resolution 598119R by majority consent.
We have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Kimbrough.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of my colleague, Dr. Applyrs, I notice Resolution 598119R and ask for its passage.
Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council reappointing Donald A. Hyman to the Cable Television, Public Education, and Government Access Oversight Board.
Discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anani.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ms. Doesschate.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ms. Fahey. Ms. Farrell.
Yes.
Mr. Hoey.
Yes, co-sponsor.
Mr. Igo. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Kimbrough. Mr. O'Brien.
Yes, co-sponsored.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
14 in the affirmative. I'm sorry, 11 in the affirmative.
Resolution passes. Ms. Fahey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I notice Resolution 588119R and ask for its passage and a roll call vote thereon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fahey. Can the clerk please read the resolution?
Resolution of the Common Council consenting to an
Confirming. Adriana.
Resolution of the Common Council confirming the appointment of Adriana LeBlanc as a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Discussion on the resolution. Seeing none, can the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Anani.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ms. Doesschate.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Ms. Fahey. Ms. Farrell.
Yes, co-sponsor, please.
Mr. Hoey.
Yes, co-sponsor.
Mr. Igo. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Kimbrough. Mr. O'Brien.
Yes, co-sponsored.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
11 in the affirmative.
Resolution passes. Congratulations to both. Mr. Kimbrough.
Rest of the resolutions are held. If there's no further business, I
Mr.
move we
O'Brien.
adjourn.
Second.
Wait.
Mr. O'Brien.
I want to comment on two things briefly, and the first one relates to Councilmember Igo's resolution along with Tom Hoey and Jack Flynn to basically, when we're reviewing whether an environmental impact statement is required, to aggregate the effect of other projects along with it. And I attended that meeting on the 29th when it was tabled, and the planning department came in and basically said they didn't think it was such a good idea. In fact, they may have even hinted that it was illegal. But I'm totally puzzled by that because on July 2nd, 2019, Brad Glass, as planning director, sent a letter to the Guilderland Town Board regarding the project that is threatening Rapp Road, in which he asked for precisely that thing to happen. And I would note that in the Albany one, the project that they said didn't have any impact on New Scotland Avenue was one that existed over where the Palladium Bowling Alley is, 1.1 miles away. And that supposedly would have no impact on New Scotland Avenue. But nevertheless, Albany argued in front of the Guilderland Planning Board successfully, because Guilderland adopted it, that everything within a certain zoning district, which extends for at least 2 miles, would be considered when they are trying to decide if they should do an full environmental impact statement on the construction project that's going to threaten Rapp Road. And not only did they, look at, well, obviously the biggest thing that they were looking at was probably the largest already approved project in the whole Capital District, or one of the largest, and that's Crossgates Mall, as well as potential future projects. So it was kind of an enlightened, all-encompassing view that Albany argued successfully to Gilliland. So I had no reason to doubt the legality of it. In fact, I think it's kind of a common sense thing. And certainly, if it is illegal, I'm sure the Pyramid Corporation has more than enough money to pay lawyers to come in and argue that it's not a legal concept. But I really doubt that's going to see how we're going to see it play out. And then the other thing I wanted to just comment, Beverly Bardicas, who is the president of the Rapp Road Historical Association, came in and talked about how the city has got to basically submit and address the issue of, is Rapp Road going to continue to be a thoroughfare? Rapp Road, and it's important to know the history of this, Rapp Road was originally a farm road. It was settled in the, it is the only continuously occupied community from the northern migration that occurred from Mississippi between 1930 and 1950. And it's continually occupied. It's historically recognized, and there's no way that it should have been connected 30 years ago to the pyramid, to the Crossgates Ring Road. It has more traffic than it can handle. It has no street lights, no walking paths, as well as the streets that connect into it also have no street lights, no walking paths. We've tried to bring this to the attention of the city for at least a year, and personally feel the only thing we've gotten is lip service. So the Rapp Road Neighborhood Association did send a letter. Well, I got to backtrack. Pyramid proposed 2 mitigation plans. The city didn't like them. Then Pyramid came up with a 3rd mitigation plan. We asked the city what it was. They said, we can't talk about it now. The only way we learned that the city had refused it was to go to a Gilderland Planning Board meeting and be told by the Gilderland Planning Board that it had been refused, this mitigation plan for Rapp Road that Pyramid would have paid for, had been refused by the city of Albany. So the Rapp Road Neighborhood Association wrote a letter to the mayor basically saying that they were disappointed with the fact that this was not shared with the Historical Association, and we were disappointed with that, and we would like to have ongoing meetings where we were not just informed of what was going on, but that the Rapp Road Historical Association might also have a seat at the table. And we were shocked, and that's no understatement, we were shocked by the response that we got from the mayor's office, which basically had said that we had grossly mischaracterized what the Gilderland Planning Board said. Not true. It was quoted verbatim, so there was no gross mischaracterization. And then it goes on to say that the city had explicitly shared all this information, had numerous meetings. Not true. They really had 2 meetings on this whole plan, and the first one was just to say, well, we'll look at it, and then the second one was an on-site visit to look at the first 2 plans that Crossgates had proposed, which had problems with them. We never saw the 3rd plan. We're never shown it. We asked for it, but we're declined to have any sort of play. And then the letter says that the city come up with its own plan, which would have addressed all of the Albany residents' concerns. We have never seen it. So it was disappointing. There was another meeting in front of the Gilderland Planning Board on the 14th of August, and we will certainly be there because that appears to be our best way of being informed as to what Albany has done to represent, and this project is literally going to be right on the border. It's in Gilderland, but Albany should be playing, in our opinion, a more active role. And we hope that we can get a dialogue going with the city, not just for the problems that this new apartment development is going to create, but for the problems that have existed on the road for the past 30 years since it became a thoroughfare to cross gates. Namely, the fact that there's no walking paths, no streetlights, not just on Rapp Road, but all the streets which connect into it. And it is a very historic black community. It's nationally recognized. It has a historic marker. And I don't know. I think the course of action has got to change and become softer and more enlightened. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Of all the new processes that are coming into play as this administration attempts to foster their plan to take the city in the direction that they're taking it in, all while we have 14 people younger than 20 years old caught with a gun since May, which includes 5 16-year-olds, 1 15-year-old, 1 14-year-old, and 1 12-year-old. Notice that the ages are getting younger and younger. I cry out about the need of youth, proactive youth programming. Our youth are crying out for help. Who is going to help them? Which leads me to the real question. How much longer is Jonathan Jones going to have to underserve the Second Ward as he has done for the past 5.5 years? It is not fair that many share the same feelings as I do. And many people feel the same way as I do, but won't speak up or say it publicly due to the responses that this administration has shown to this point. Our families need parks and recreation to provide year-round services that any kid who is trying to escape their personal struggles to find necessary connections that the city once offered. I'm calling for the resignation of the current commissioner, Jonathan Jones. I have witnessed such a high turnaround in the many employment opportunities that are offered by Parks and Recreation when historically people held on to these jobs forever. Just look at the constant confusion that stays around the department. Residents are tired of the complaints falling on deaf ears. Our city deserves better than the excuses that always follows our concerns regarding our frustrations with Commissioner Jones. I wish our city, especially the Second Ward, got the protection that Commissioner Jonathan Jones gets from this administration. You know, more than 2 years ago, I stood on the other side of that microphone as an employee of Parks and Recreation. So, you know, I know about what goes on from a firsthand perspective. And for 2 years, you know, I've advocated for youth programming and not really saying personal attacks versus the commissioner. But the time has come. The gentleman that spoke earlier, Mr. Tucker, myself and him sat at that table with Commissioner Jones, and we were promised that Elizabeth Street Park was going to be taken care of. It was our turn. All right, the project was started in April. Here it is, the first week of August, and it's still not completed. And the only reason why we have the blacktop on the court right now is because we made so much noise. But you know, I was bothered to ride down Ontario and to see contractors doing the work on Ontario. I was bothered by that. If you hear equity, you hear a bunch of things. You know, as I move throughout the city, I don't just hear from people in the Second Ward. You know, high-ranking officials in the city laugh at me when we discuss Jonathan Jones. You know, and it's funny because, you know, I worked for him for 3 years, but yet my name is misspelled on a document coming from Parks and Recreation. You know, I open up this letter and I look at All Olympics. You want to see one of the biggest jokes in Albany? Go to the All Olympics. This is the 6th annual function that pretty much they mandate people to go. You know, when people are coming to Parks and Recreation looking for assistance, looking for funding, all you hear from this administration is we have no money. But, you know, we have departments with surpluses. It doesn't make sense. It's, you know, way that our people were handled this weekend, it was atrocious. It was disrespectful for our leader to be up there pointing her finger, sharing her personal concerns with folks and not expecting a response, and thinking that it's okay to send boxes of pizzas up to our residents, like that's going to make things right. To think that it's okay that you can constantly take away from our community, and then you call one of us to have a meeting, and you think that we're not going to start speaking up and we're not going to come out. You know, I was happy to see people over there that I can identify. I always respect people from upper ward. You know, the fact that they come here and I don't feel us responding to their concerns, it bothers me at night. Because I remember being a person that sat in that chair that was getting mistreated by this administration, by this commissioner, and no one did anything about it. I called, I came, I reached out to everyone to get help. And now I'm sitting in a position where it just seems like the concerns of our community get washed away. When I asked her a question, why wasn't the commissioner here, and her response is because he's dealing with a youth summer program that everybody knows that Paul runs. And I just feel like it's unfair that this guy gets more support than lifelong residents in this community, and the message has to be sent. Last year, they put in glass backboards at Arbor Hill. It was a knee-jerk reaction to them putting a dumpster in the middle of a court to stop a tournament that had been going on forever and is getting the blame of the incidents and the reality of the Capital District. You know, if that tournament plays out, the things that's going on come to that tournament doesn't recruit them. And you know, it's like policing in our community. We have to pay 2 times for policing, because we're paying through tax dollars, and then we're being asked to fundraise to come up with, I think the number that was suggested softly was somewhere between $14,000 and $20,000 to have a 2-day basketball tournament in our part of town. That, you know, in the past we've been able to have it with little to no police presence, and we didn't have problems. So, you know, the fact that our community centers, I have invited my colleagues to take a walk through there. I have taken pictures. We have a Hoffman Community Center that has 0 machines in there. It has nothing in there but 3 basketball hoops. And then I have to come to meetings and watch Parks and Recreation come up in here and give us this song and dance like they're moving mountains in our community. The time has come that somebody needs to join the voice of the community and tell Jonathan Jones his free ride is over with. Because, you know, many of us sitting here that can hear me know that what I'm saying has a lot of validity to it. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm a product of Parks and Recreation, and I'm proud of it. But I think that the future generation should be able to benefit from Parks and Recreation for what this city is not offering our low-income communities. Something needs to be done. So once again, I'm calling for Jonathan Jones, the Commissioner of Parks and Recreation, and whatever other departments he oversees, his resignation. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. And, you know, for the interest of time to members of the public, I will keep my statement brief, but I do want to, there were so many issues addressed on this evening. First, I would like to publicly acknowledge and thank Mr. Decky Lawson and Mr. Patrick Robinson for the tireless work they do in our community and keeping our kids off the street and providing recreational activities for our children. And, you know, I want to publicly go on record and thank you all for that. The mayor mentioned in my meeting that I had with her earlier today that she was, you know, frustrated at some of the she was frustrated with how certain processes were going about and at the RPL softball field. But for me, it goes deeper than that. Our community is frustrated as well. When you think about Dante Ivy, who was tased while minding his own business by the Albany Police Department, when you think about Elazar Williams, who was shot in the back and now he's paralyzed by one of our Albany Police Department detectives, when you think about a dumpster placed in the middle of the Arbor Hill New Courts, which is a gym to people in the community of color, when you think about the 3 men on First Street who were brutally beaten at the hands of Albany police officers, and when you think about 2 men who are pillars in our community who were publicly embarrassed and disrespected in front of members of their own community by her own mayor, we are tired of the hostile actions of white people in power in our community. We're tired of it. While we are disrespected, we are expected to continue to show respect to people who disrespect us. It's time out for that. And this time is over for that. The actions of the mayor on that day were deplorable. We are all here as elected officials to serve the people of the city of Albany and respect every person. That's what we're called to do. The actions that the mayor showed that day were not the actions of a servant of the people. And so with that said, I publicly condemn her actions. And when I said that she owes the members of our community an apology, she said, I'm the one that deserves an apology. That's not right, and that's not fair. Thank you.
Mr. Ballard. Mr. Ballard. Mr. Ballard. Mr. Hoey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll keep this very brief. We had a meeting a couple of meetings ago. We had the director of planning come in and explain the USDO. And one of the comments he made was, this takes away the uncertainty from developers who want to come in and do a project. The problem I see with it is that we've taken the uncertainty away from the developers and put the uncertainty on the citizens of our city. They don't know what's going to happen, what's going to pop up. So we do need to look at the USDO. As been mentioned, there is problems with it. I did take, was a little bit upset when I heard a person say, well, the public needs to know. This is a 300-page document that's available online, and I'm having a very hard time reading through it. And I've really tried. It's extremely hard. The county council makes the laws. And just like we pass laws on taxes and everything else, we should be passing ordinances. The USDO took away that ability from any one common council. So, years from now when I'm gone and dead, this USDO is going to be still there. And hopefully it'll be a living document and that we don't get pushback all the time when we find problems with it and want to approve it. You got to remember there's checks and balances. That's the way the city works. And the second thing, I just want to make sure that we acknowledge tonight's Jared's last night here. He did a great job for us. I am going to really miss him. I'm glad he's staying with the city, and I'm sure that we will work with him in the future. So I'd just like a round for
Thank you, Mr. Hoey. I was going to recognize Jared as well, but thank you for doing that. Before we end, I would like to say a few words. And I want to say this for public disclosure. I try to stay out of public discourse when it comes to a family member of mine. Decky Lawson is my first cousin. I lived with them, grew up with them, because back then you could live with family members and you just kept it moving. He took over Arbor Hill softball complex after I left. I was doing it for 10 years. There was no payment. The field was a mess. There were no bathrooms. We couldn't get grass cut on a regular basis. And it was a fight every year just to get basic services. And that fight was because they wanted the field to be closed down from the community. Frank Rogers, for many, many years in this city, built whatever wealth he has off of his flag football leagues, his softball leagues, using city properties to do so. So when we talk about this notion that people feel like they're trying to take the field away, that comes from the historical context of this man when I was doing it for free and Jennings was mayor, where we had to fight to keep that field away from Mr. Rogers. We were supplied no money. We were supplied no equipment. Me and my cousin, on days when it would rain, we'd have to sweep out, do it for free, clean the bathroom. Sometimes we'd come and the bathrooms would be torn up, and we started feeling like they were purposely making us give up, purposely. So when the community talks about them taking our field, and I think this is where the mayor misses it. My cousin testified and said, July 3rd, I instructed my cousin and Mr. Patrick Robinson when all this came about, and the mayor said, yes, I was informed all of this. And I met with the deputy commissioner, Justin, and I explained to him the historical context of Arbor Hill. That park was not built because it was a park in the city. It was built because of the racial violence and tensions that were happening throughout the city of Albany. So when you look at it, it is not a city park that they just said we're going to build for them. It was built to keep the racial tensions down and to keep people of color in their neighborhood. I relayed that to Justin. I relayed that to our mayor when she called me about why do people feel like it's theirs. because they knew historically why that park was there and why that complex was there. So I instructed my cousin when he told me his side that he met with Justin. I said, you need to go and meet with Brian Shea and tell him that you were told you don't need a schedule. They did that. Mr. Robinson and my cousin, they waited for an hour. They got no phone call. They got no further follow-up. I followed up. Mr. Shea knew they were there. So when the mayor shows up that day and said what she said, that's why the community felt disrespected. Because the community had already known these two gentlemen went down and tried to talk with the mayor and with her staff and tell her, this is what we were told, this is what happened. So when the mayor shows up in that community and embarrasses those two gentlemen in front of their neighborhood, their community, that they've been there for years for free, keeping a park going for free, that's why this is outrage. That's why people have come down tonight. Because everything would have been eliminated with a return phone call or a return meeting so they could say their side. It did not happen. And yes, I tried to be the mediator. Yes, my cousin even called me 2 days before and said, and this is the typical standard way when we know something is wrong. Corey, a player came and told me we're going to be kicked off our field on Thursday. Not somebody from the city, not somebody who works for the city, a player who played in Frank Rogers' league. So what does that say to us? That says to us that Frank Rogers is going to make sure you don't use that field on that day. That's what it means, because we dealt with it before. All this has historical context to it. Did I up and run and call the mayor and no, I told my cousins explicitly, if you did not hear from the city, you continue to play. And unfortunately, when he did hear from the city, it was the mayor of Albany coming outside, and I don't know, I haven't seen the video, but I was told by many phone calls and many emails what transpired and how hurt people were and how disappointed people were at the actions of our mayor at that time. So when we look at this situation and we look at how we handle things, and I think as the frustration of some have with this administration, yes, the mayor apologized. We thank her for that. Whether you choose to believe it was sincere or not, that is for you. That is for yourself. That is for your conscience. But if we're going to continue to build the city and we continue to talk about equity, equity is just not a number. Equity is people. Equity is recognizing the things that individuals in this city have contributed to, continue to contribute to make our neighborhoods better. And when a leader of a city chastises someone in public that way, what does that say how they view those communities and those leaders within those communities? I was disappointed because my cousin, I'm a lot older than him, and he looks for me for guidance. And I gave him that guidance of how we should do things. And he was sent a message saying, so what? This is how we do things. And that's disappointing. It hurts. It really does. Because with all the violence we have, with everything we have to deal with in a city, now we have to deal with people feeling their community leaders are being disrespected, who they know continues to give and give and give. And I was hesitant to say anything because it's not about Decky Lawson being my cousin. It's not about Mr. Patrick Robinson, we grew up together. It's not about that. It's about these individuals, along with others who are up there every single day, 90-degree weather, hundreds of kids, adults, doing something frankly, most people won't do. But they give because they love their city and they love their neighborhood. So that's why the community, that's why Mr. Johnson and Mr. Robertson, they stand up for them because they know the work that they do. They know it. And if we don't do that in those neighborhoods, other neighborhoods do it. They stand up for their community leaders. So when ours do it, it's not a knock on a mayor. It's not being against the mayor. It is speaking truth to power and what is right. And what is right? We all want to be respected as we live in this city. We all are valued. And we all deserve the decency and respect. So, yes, we had an unprecedented number of people that we haven't had in this chamber, and I hope they continue to come back because this is just a small issue on the number of issues that plague your community. And the budget is the time to be down here. That's the time to be down here. When we go through budget negotiations and we start talking about what we don't have, as Mr. Ballerin pointed out, those are the times that we need, and you need to voice, and you need to support your council members from any neighborhood. With that being said, I'm hoping we move forward. I know we will move forward, and I'm still going to remain optimistic and positive about where we're heading as a city, but we have a lot of work to do, and we all know it. We have a lot of healing to do, and we all know it. So, with that being said, Mr. Kimbrough, is there a second? Meeting adjourned.